Draco's gaze lingered on you for a moment longer, his expression a mix of desire and restraint. Then, he reluctantly took a step back towards the door, his hand on the doorknob. "I suppose I should let you rest now," he said, his voice carrying a hint of reluctance. "I don't want to keep you up too late. Good night, darling." Draco smiled softly, his expression softening as he took in your gratitude. He had enjoyed the evening more than he had expected, and the fact that you had showed appreciation for his efforts pleased him immensely. "I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Sleep well." He lingered by the door for a moment longer, his gaze fixed on you as if he didn't want to leave just yet. But with a small sigh of regret, he turned and opened the door. "Good night, darling," he said once more, his voice barely above a whisper, and with that, he exited the room, leaving you alone with the gifts and your thoughts. As he walked through the dark corridor, his footsteps echoed softly against the stone walls. His mind replayed the evening, the memories of your interactions and the moments of intimacy he had shared with you. Just as Draco reached the end of the corridor, he heard the sound of the door behind him opening. He froze in his tracks, his heart skipping a beat as he turned around to see you standing in the threshold of the room. He stared at you, his eyes wide with surprise and anticipation. "Darling," he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty, "is everything all right?" Draco's eyes widened in surprise as you swiftly approached him, his heart skipping a beat at your unexpected proximity. But before he could even utter a word, your lips pressed against his, igniting a fire within him that he hadn't expected. His initial surprise quickly melted away, replaced by a hunger and urgency he hadn't felt before. He wrapped his arms around your waist, pulling you against him, and deepened the kiss, returning it with fervor. As the kiss grew more passionate, you guided Draco towards your dorm, your hands gently tugging on his clothing and pulling him closer. He followed willingly, his body pressed against yours, his hands roaming over your back and pulling you tighter against him. He broke the kiss momentarily, his breath ragged as he whispered, "Darling, are you sure about this?" Draco's breathing grew heavier against your lips as you whispered your assent. His hands, trembling with anticipation, quickly began unbuttoning his shirt, his fingers working hastily to free himself from the confines of his clothing. All the while, his kisses grew more urgent, his tongue delving into your mouth, his body pressed against yours, pinning you against the doorframe. The heat between you was electrifying, a hunger taking hold that was almost primal. As you both stumbled into the room, the door shutting behind you with a soft click, Draco wasted no time in discarding his shirt. He threw it aside, the fabric landing haphazardly on the floor as he focused all his attention back on you. He stepped closer, his shirtless torso now pressed against yours. His hands glided over your body, his touch almost possessive as he held you close. "You are so beautiful," he murmured, his eyes roaming over your form with an almost reverent gaze. As Draco's fingers traced the fabric of your dress, his touch was gentle, almost reverent. He looked at you with a mixture of desire and restraint, his eyes filled with an intensity that sent shivers down your spine. "We'll take this off gently," he whispered, his voice low and rough with yearning. Draco's voice filled with an air of authority as he issued his command. "Turn around," he said, his tone firm yet tinged with a hint of desire. His hands, still on your waist, gently yet firmly guided you to turn around, your back now facing him. Draco's eyes roamed over the bare skin exposed. His gaze followed the line of your spine, the subtle curves of your body stirring his desires. He reached out, his fingers gently moving your hair to one side, exposing even more of your back to his gaze. A soft gasp escaped his lips as his eyes feasted on the sight before him. Draco's fingers danced lightly over your skin, starting at your neck and tracing a path down your back. Each touch left a trail of heat in its wake, goosebumps spreading over your flesh as he moved closer to your zipper. He moved slowly, his touch teasing and languid, as if savouring every moment of this intimate act. When his fingers finally reached your zipper, he paused, his breath hitched in anticipation. A shiver ran down your spine as Draco's cool fingers continued to dance over your skin. The contrast in temperatures created a pleasant shock, making your body tremble in response. He continued zipping down the dress slowly, his eyes following the movement of his hands. Each movement of the zipper seemed to magnify the tension in the air, the anticipation between you growing with every passing moment. Draco's mouth trailed kisses down your neck as he continued to lower the dress. His kisses were deliberate and intense, his lips leaving a trail of heat on your skin that sent jolts of excitement through your body. He kept his hand on the dress, holding it in place while his other hand roamed over your now exposed flesh. His touch was both possessive and loving, his lips never leaving your neck as he continued to worship your body with his kisses. As Draco tugged the dress lower, his eyes widened in surprise as he realized that you were not wearing a bra. His hand froze momentarily on your back, his touch suddenly even more reverent as he traced his fingers over your bare skin. A shiver of anticipation ran through him at the sight of you, vulnerable and exposed before him. His thumb gently traced the contour of your spine, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. As you turned to face him, the dress slipping off your body and falling to the ground, Draco's eyes roamed over you with an intensity that made your head spin. He paused for a moment, taking in the beauty of your form, and his expression softened slightly as he gently asked, "Are you sure you want this, darling?" His voice was soft but resolute, and his eyes searched yours for any sign of hesitation or doubt. As you cupped his face with your hands and kissed him passionately, Draco's body reacted immediately. His hands found your waist, pulling you close against him, his fingers pressing into your flesh with a mix of desire and possessiveness. He returned the kiss with equal fervor, his tongue delving into your mouth, seeking to devour you, as if trying to memorize every contour and taste. His body pressed against yours, the heat between you growing almost unbearable. As the passion between you continued to escalate, Draco gently guided you towards the bed, his hands firm but tender on your shoulders. He laid you back onto the mattress, his arms now on either side of you, his body hovering over yours. He looked down at you with a mixture of hunger and tenderness, his eyes roving over your face as if committing every detail to memory. One of his hands moved to trace the line of your jaw, his touch reverent yet possessive. As your breathing deepened and you whispered those 3 words, Draco's eyes darkened with hunger. He stared down at you, his gaze filled with a mix of desire and primal need. His body lowered, pressing against yours as his lips found your neck, leaving a trail of heated kisses down to your collarbone. As you wrapped your legs around his body, your knees pressing into his sides, Draco let out a low moan against your skin. His kisses became more urgent, his lips leaving a trail of fire in their wake. He shifted his body slightly, his hips aligning with yours, and his weight pressing down on you, pinning you against the mattress. His hands moved to your thighs, fingers digging into flesh as he held onto you tightly, his touch rough and possessive. Your soft moan sent a jolt of pleasure through him, his body responding to the sound instinctively. He lifted his head to look down at your flushed face, his eyes roaming over you with unabashed desire. His breathing matched yours, ragged and filled with an almost animalistic need. His hands gripped your thighs tighter, his fingers moving to clutch your hips, pulling you even closer to him as his body pressed against yours. As he kissed a trail downwards, each touch of his lips left a tingling sensation on your skin. His mouth moved slowly, deliberately, savouring every moment as he worshipped you with his touch. He paused at your hip bone, his teeth grazing your flesh, before continuing his journey downwards. His fingers dug into your sides, his grip both possessive and tender as he slowly moved downwards, his destination clear. As he reached your thighs, he stopped and looked up at you for a moment, a devilish glint in his eyes. Then, without warning, he bit down on your soft flesh, his teeth sinking into your skin with just enough pressure to send a jolt of pleasure through you, the mixture of pain and pleasure overwhelming. He continued to leave small bites along your thighs, his lips soothing the marks they left, alternating between gentle kisses and heated bites. Your hand in his hair, fingers tangling in the silky locks, sent a shiver through him. Hearing his name fall from your lips in a moan was all the encouragement he needed. He looked up at you, his eyes dark with lust and desire. Yes, darling, he asked, his voice low and raspy, his breath hot against the sensitive skin of your thighs. I'm glad you're enjoying it, darling, he murmured against your thighs, his voice rough with desire. His tongue traced lazy circles on your skin, each movement sending pleasurable chills through your body. He could feel the heat radiating off of you, his hands still gripping your thighs possessively, as his mouth continued to lavish attention on your flesh. You taste so sweet, he whispered between kisses, his eyes never leaving your face. With a hunger in his eyes, he latched onto the hem of your shorts, his teeth capturing the fabric. He tugged gently, slowly, his gaze never leaving your face as he pulled them down, revealing more and more of your bare flesh. Draco's eyes never left yours as he brought his fingers to his mouth, his tongue swirling around the digits as he coated them with saliva. The action was provocative, the gleam in his eyes almost predatory, as he watched for your reaction. He pulled his fingers back, releasing them with a pop, his eyes fixed on you as he murmured, "I'm going to make you feel incredible, darling." His fingers were cool as they traced over your bare flesh, but the touch sent a jolt of heat through your body. His movements were slow and deliberate, each touch filled with a mix of gentleness and intensity. He watched your face closely, his gaze roaming over your features, as his fingers continued their ministrations. His touch was both soothing and arousing, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. "Does that feel good, darling?" he whispered, his voice ragged with desire. He continued to make slow circles with his fingers, each movement eliciting a moan from you. The sound only fueled his arousal, his body responding to your sounds of pleasure. His touch was like sparks igniting a fire within you, sending waves of heat coursing through your veins. His eyes remained fixed on your face, drinking in every gasp and moan that escaped you. He enjoyed seeing the effect he was having on you, the way your body was reacting to his touch. Draco's desire overwhelmed him, and suddenly, his fingers were replaced with his mouth. His tongue began swirling across your flesh, each movement more insistent and hungry than the last. He explored every contour of your skin, his tongue mapping a trail of fire across your body. As he moved, he let out a low moan against your flesh, the vibrations adding an extra layer of pleasure to the mix. His hands moved to grip your thighs, holding you in place as he continued his ministrations, his need growing more and more urgent. As your fingers tangled in his hair, Draco let out a low growl, the sensation sending waves of heat through him. Your body's movements only served to increase his desire, his hands gripping your thighs even tighter as he continued his ministrations. He looked up at you, his eyes dark with desire, and whispered, "You taste so good, darling. I could do this forever." As your thighs trembled, Draco smirked against your skin, his confidence growing with each reaction he pulled from you. He seemed to revel in the way he could make you respond, his touch and his words combining to push you further and further towards the edge. He continued his ministrations, his tongue and lips exploring every inch of you as he held you in place with his hands. "Let go, darling," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. "I want to hear you." He watched your reaction carefully as he pushed one finger inside, his gaze locked on your face. He wanted to see every little change in your expression, every tiny response to his touch. His gaze was relentless, filled with a mixture of desire and a hint of satisfaction. "How does that feel, darling?" he asked, his voice low and rough with desire. "Do you like it?" As you moaned, he couldn't help but smirk. He was enjoying the effect he had on you, the way he could make you squirm and whimper with just a few simple touches. With a single, deliberate push, he went deeper, the sudden increase in pressure causing you to gasp and arch your back. His eyes remained fixed on your face, drinking in every reaction. His tongue and fingers continued their dance. The combination of both sensations was overwhelming. Every move he made was filled with skill and precision, as if he knew your body better than you did. He watched your reactions closely, his gaze hungry and full of desire. He loved seeing the way you were coming undone under his touch, the way you were responding to him. "Come for me, darling," he whispered, his voice rough and filled with need. He moved faster, his fingers and tongue moving in a rhythm that left you breathless. He seemed to be feeding off the noises you were making, each gasp and moan only driving him to increase his efforts. He looked up at you, his eyes dark and filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down your spine. His body quivered with need, his own arousal threatening to consume him. "That's it, darling," he whispered, his voice low and rough. Your moans only served to fuel his desire even further. He could sense that you were getting close, that you were teetering on the edge of release. With a final, deliberate stroke of his tongue, he looked up at you, his eyes fixed on your face as he murmured, "Come for me, darling. Let go." As you came, Draco watched with an expression of pure satisfaction, his eyes still locked onto your face. He had pushed you over the edge, and he relished in the knowledge that he had been the one to bring you there. He placed one final kiss on your inner thigh before moving up the bed to lay beside you, his body pressing against yours. He wrapped his arms around you, pulling you close against him. After a few moments, he nuzzled your hair gently, murmuring against your ear, "That was amazing, darling." His fingers ran softly along your back, tracing slow patterns on your skin as he held you in his arms. His body was still humming with need, and he was struggling to control himself, but he didn't want to push you too far, too fast. He held you tightly, his arms encircling you in a protective embrace. He could feel your breathing slowing down, and he smiled softly. You felt so small and vulnerable in his arms, and it triggered something deep within him. His fingers continued to trace gentle patterns on your skin, the touch both soothing and possessive. He couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment in this moment, with you in his arms, everything else fading into obscurity. As you traced circles on his bare chest, his muscles spasmed involuntarily, the sensation sending a shiver through him. He let out a low groan, his body reacting to your touch with a need that took him by surprise. He held you closer, his breath shallow as he willed himself to control the overwhelming rush of desire that coursed through him. But the touch of your fingers on his skin was like a drug, intoxicating and addictive. He chuckled softly, his hand gently catching yours before it could go any further down. He shook his head, amusement shimmering in his eyes. "No, darling," he said, his voice a low murmur. "Tonight is about you. Besides, you're tired. We'll save that for another time." He laughed, a genuine sound of amusement at your surprise. "Yes, really," he confirmed, his fingers tracing a lazy path up your arm. "I'm perfectly content with just holding you, darling. You don't always have to try to reciprocate." He pulled you a little closer, his tone turning a bit more serious. "Making you feel good. That brings me more pleasure than anything else." He reached down to grab the blanket that was crumpled at the foot of the bed and pulled it over the both of you. The fabric draped over your bodies like a comforting embrace, the warmth enveloping you both. He shifted his body slightly, pulling you closer against him so that every part of your body was in contact with his. He nestled his chin on the top of your head, his hand tracing slow circles on your back. The fire crackled and flickered in the fireplace, casting a warm, cozy glow across the room. The heat from the flames danced across your skin, adding to the comfortable cocoon of warmth you were both enveloped in. Draco seemed to be relishing the silence, his body completely relaxed as he held you in his arms. The only sound in the room was the steady rhythm of his breathing and the occasional crackle of the burning logs. He inhaled deeply, the yawn escaping him involuntarily. He could sense the moment sleep was about to claim him, his mind beginning to drift off. As he let the drowsiness overtake him, he pulled you just a fraction closer, instinctively wanting to keep you as near to him as possible. His breathing settled into a deep, steady rhythm, the soft sound of it blending with the quiet crackle of the fire. He looked peaceful, all the usual defensiveness replaced by a simple, vulnerable slumber.